Hi, sixth graders. We are already in the month of December. It is hard to believe. I'm excited to be talking to you today about another great collection of books for both Miss Trudeau and Miss Rogers classes this morning. I don't know about you, but it might be a little bit hard to find time to read for fun these days. You're being asked to do quite a bit at home with all of your assignments for school. And maybe even when you do have time to read, you're finding that it is difficult to settle into a good book. So I thought maybe I'd spend just a minute before I got into our collection today talking a little bit about that struggle. Even for those who really love to read, really love to get into a good story, it can be hard when we're in a new routine. And so I'm going to just take a moment to do so. One tip, one piece of advice is just to keep some reading materials right by you. For a number of students and adults, I think this is an easy thing to kind of forget about. And that's just that we need to have those reading materials ready for us. If we have free time at home, but we don't have something right there ready to read, that makes it difficult. So this means, getting to the library, whether it's our library or our, local public libraries, to get some good books to read, putting some things on hold. If you're already using your iPad for reading, for Mac and Via, or if you have other e-readers like a Kindle or a Nook or something else, finding those reading materials and having those things at the ready for you. Maybe you're someone who likes to read and reread the books that you already have, and that's great. But maybe just considering that having some of those materials handy and having them ready for you when you're ready to read something, even if you're not feeling in the mood to read right now, knowing that you'll have something later when you are in the mood for it is, I think, a good piece of advice to have in mind. Another way to get yourself in the mood to read is to find a way to connect the reading to your everyday life. If you're not already doing this, making reading a part of your daily schedule is another great way to get yourself back in the mode of reading. I know for your English classes, many of you are already doing this. You might be reading 15 or 20 minutes a day as part of your regular class. If you're not already doing that, or if you've sort of fallen off of that, finding another time of day that works for you. In my daily life, the time of day that works best for me is usually when my kids are in bed and our house is quiet. That seems to be the time of day that works the best for me. Honestly, without that time of day, if I don't get a lot of reading done, if I'm tired in the evening, I usually don't get as much reading done, or sometimes no reading done, if I'm too tired in a given evening. So finding a pattern for you that works well. Maybe you're an early riser. Maybe it works best for you to go outside and put some earbuds in and listen to an audiobook and take a little walk around. Find a way that connects reading to your everyday life so it can become part of your routine. Making sure that you're also considering what your hobbies and personal interests are. Reading's only as interesting and satisfying for you as it is if it's about topics you care about. As I share some of the books that I'm going to talk about today, some of the books are going to sound great, and some are going to sound probably not at all interesting, and it's going to be something that you probably are going to figure out within seconds, because topics that you care about are going to sound more interesting, and that reading becomes more interesting and satisfying if it's about a topic that you're already interested in. I know that seems like kind of a, well, duh, Mrs. Martin, of course. But if it's something you haven't thought about in a while, consider that again. One other thing, I know I've mentioned this to you before, but keeping in mind you have lots of ways, both through your classes over Zoom, on Schoology, you have ways to connect with friends, connect with each other, talk about what are some recommendations that they have. You guys are your best network, I guess, of connecting and talking about what are some things that other people are reading to sort of help direct reading choices. If someone else has read something that they like and you know that you and that person have something in common. They're a great person to connect you with another good book. So those are just a couple of things to keep in mind, developing those reading habits while we're at home in particular, and not having this as part of our everyday in-school life. Keeping up that reading at home is especially important, and it's really just something to enjoy, and I hope it's something that you're able to keep doing. It's a really nice escape, especially when you're looking for something to do, to relax and to pass the time. Well, with that in mind, before I get into our books for today, I did want to share that our Scholastic Book Fair that was these past 2 weeks online, we purchased a number of fantastic books to add to our library. This is just a handful of the, I think, almost 50 books that we ended up buying to add to our collection. A lot of them are going to be available for you to place on hold very, very soon. And I'll try to put an announcement out on Schoology as soon as those books are ready for you. We've got them shipping to us as I speak. This is just a sampling of some of the books that will be available. If you wanted to take a quick screenshot of this, if there are any of these books already that you're thinking, oh good, these are some of the books that I wanted to read, make a note, be ready, put these books on hold, because these are going to be some, I think, of the most popular titles that are going to be coming your way. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, of course, is one of the collection with the Hunger Games. Out of Hiding is a great story about World War II and historical fiction. Hey Kiddo is a graphic novel that has won a couple different awards here in the past month or two. If you've read The Hate U Give, or if you've seen that movie, on the come up is the her latest book, Angie Thomas's latest book. Of course, we've got Diary of a Wimpy Kid and that latest story in that collection, and The Last Kids on Earth, the latest in that one, as well as Hide and Seeker and Deep Fake, which were two of the videos featured on the book fair video. So anyway, a couple of things to keep in mind. Let's go ahead and jump into the books that are already in the library and ones that you could place on hold right after you watch this video. Your teachers asked me today to focus on books that look at some different writers' craft. You are talking a little bit in class about how writers often make very intentional choices about how they craft a story. So each of the books that I've selected today, the writers have done different things with their formatting. And by format, I mean how they've chosen to put the book together, how they've chosen to write it. This first story, TTYL by Lauren Miracle, as you can see from the cover, is a story that is written in text messaging format. I don't know about you, but I do a fair amount of that, and I have a feeling most of you do too. You probably know way more about it than I do. In fact, most of the time I'm having to look up some of the abbreviations. In this story, this is about 3 girls who are in high school. They have already said to themselves at the beginning of this year, no drama. We had so much drama in middle school. We are done with that. We're going to get along. We're going to make sure our friendship stays tight. We're not going to let, excuse me, we're not going to let any boys get in our way. And then the school year begins, and they're a few weeks into the year, and before you know it, well, like things tend to happen, the friendship and the relationships and the school things all start to get kind of messy. The whole book is written, the entire thing, in text message conversations. So you've got conversations between these 3 girls, among these 3 girls, I should say. You've got text messages between, one girl and another classmate, or one girl and a boy they go to school with. And you're kind of going back and forth, throughout the whole story, keeping track of who's talking to whom, what rumors are flying around, what's true, what's not true. And you're wondering, are they even going to make it through this year and still be friends by the end? It's a fun story in that you get to see these friendships kind of ebb and flow, the roller coaster of that, and just seeing how the writer used this text message format to write a story. What a cool unique format to use. I think this was so creative. It's realistic fiction, and you can take a look in the catalog by typing in TTYL or typing in Lauren Miracle's name. Our second book, Out of the Dust by Karen Hesse, one of my favorite historical fiction books. This book is set, as you can see from my note here, during the 1930s Dust Bowl. And it's during the Great Depression, a time in our country's history when the economic status, financial status of many, many, many families in the country was very low. People were struggling to make ends meet, struggling to have enough food to eat. And these dust storms were blowing through areas of the country and wiping out crops and farmland and livestock, the animals. I really didn't know enough about the Dust Bowl until reading this book, and reading it made me just really understand it on a whole different level. I was fascinated. Billy Jo's our main character. She's only 14 when she and her family are going through this, and you really get a sense of how awful it must have been to experience these dust bowls. The dust coming through your home, sitting at your dinner table and having to wait to actually flip your glasses upside down to drink out of them, because otherwise dust might fill them before you could even take a sip of your milk at your dinner table. Things like that, things that you wouldn't even know. But the way that Karen writes this story is beautiful. She writes it in terms of format in a free verse poetry style. So she uses this poetry to really paint this beautiful picture. I'm going to show you a little bit of a book trailer. It's kind of a long one, so we're not going to watch the whole thing. But I'll show you a little bit because they do a nice job of setting the stage for you and telling you a little bit more about this story. Let's take a look.
I sensed it before I knew it was coming. Dust.
I wanted you to have a chance to see those videos, just to have an opportunity to see that dust flowing in. And again, the way that this story is written, the format that Hesse chooses to use here with that poetry is going to paint that picture for you. You are going to feel that dust, in your hands, between your teeth, as she describes it. Really well written. The Accidental Genius of Weasel High is in realistic fiction, and this is great for fans of Diary of a Wimpy Kid. It's got that illustrated novel format going on. It's not a comic book, it's not a graphic novel, but like Wimpy Kid, it has the story and it's got the humor, and it also has drawings alongside it. Our main character's name is Larkin, and he really wants a new video camera, a new really nice one, because his dream is to be a movie, not even a producer, but what am I trying to say? Not a photographer either. He'd like to be a filmmaker. That's the word I'm looking for. He doesn't know how he's going to do that without getting a nicer camcorder to do so. His dad, though, won't give him the money to do it. And in the meantime, his sister's making his life pretty miserable. And his enemy, I guess, at school is trying to steal his girlfriend, or at least that's the way Larkin sees it. And all along the story, he's got this English assignment that he has to do. And what he has to create is kind of a narrative or a little video about his life. He decides he's going to do it as a video. I think they get a choice. If I remember correctly, they can do it as a paper or something else. And because he's into film, he decides he's going to film about his life for this English assignment. You've got to read the book to kind of find out how he's going to get through everything. Is he going to make it into this, world of being a famous filmmaker? Is he going to be able to hang on to his girlfriend? Is he going to make it through life without killing his sister? All kinds of kind of funny antics. And again, if you're a Diary of a Wimpy Kid fan, you'll enjoy it. I love how the author here used this format of the illustrations along with the story, because it really showed that playful side of Larkin's character. Don't You Dare Read This, Mrs. Dunfree by Margaret Peterson Haddix is a story that plays out both sides of a girl's life, the public side and the private side. In our story, we've got a girl who is in English class, and she's been asked to keep a journal. And Mrs. Dunfree has promised everybody in class that she will only read the journal entries that the students want her to. She said, I'd like you to journal in class every day, but if you write at the top of a journal entry, please don't read this or something like that, then she says, I promise I won't read it. I just want to see that you're journaling, every day. Well, Tish, our main character, doesn't buy that for a second. She says, to herself, well, of course the teacher's going to read it. So she writes all kinds of outlandish, really crazy stuff and writes at the top, don't you dare read this, Mrs. Dunfree. And then she just kind of waits, turns in her journal, waits to see Mrs. Dunfree's reaction. And Mrs. Dunfree returns it to her and doesn't say anything. So Tish tries that again a couple more times and nothing happens. So Tish begins to let her guard down and realizes that Mrs. Dunfree was being honest. She doesn't seem to actually be reading the ones that she has, that Tish has labeled at the top, don't you dare read this. So Tish begins to actually write about her life, honestly, truthfully. And this is kind of a big deal because Tish's life at home is very different than what she shows people on the outside. People at school don't know that Tish has a really hard home life and that she has some secrets, some really big secrets that she has been keeping without telling anyone. And she continues to write them down now, and she continues to write at the top, don't you dare read this, Mrs. Dunfree. And as the reader, you begin to hope that Mrs. Dunfree will stop obeying that request and that Mrs. Dunfree will read those entries and will help Tish, because Tish needs help. Big help. This is a story of journal entry format because, again, you're getting a chance to read what Tish is writing. And that format's really important. That's a very intentional writer's decision here. The author, Haddix, made that decision because we're getting a chance to really see Tish's innermost thoughts in that journal. This is a story you will not want to put down. It does have some kind of tough topics to it, so I will warn you of that. But it's a great story and an unforgettable one. Love That Dog and Hate That Cat by Sharon Creech. These are two stories. They're not exactly, like sequels of one another, but Love That Dog is the one I'd say you'd want to read first. And then if you've already read that one, you should take a look at Hate That Cat. This is about a kid who also has been asked to write for his English class, kind of a theme here. In this case, though, Jack hates poetry. In English, that's what they're studying. He immediately makes it clear that poems are not for him. He hates them. He's decided only girls write poetry, only girls love poetry. There's no way he's going to do it. And every time he tries to write it, all he can think of is nothing. His brain is just empty. But his teacher won't stop giving the class poetry assignments. And because Jack can't avoid them, he decides he'll finally try something. And then all of a sudden, something amazing happens. And it's that the more he writes, the more he learns he actually does have something to say. This is a really lighthearted and fun story. I think it's perfect for people who also think they hate poetry. It's great. This book is a formatted story by Creech that has both kind of a diary entry format and the poems. So you get both of those pieces here. And that's true in Hate That Cat as well. One last book for your consideration is a graphic novel, but it's also an illustrated memoir, as you can see on the cover here, meaning this is a story that is a true story, but it's been illustrated, which is what brings it into our graphic novel section. And I'm going to let the author tell you mostly about this book. It's Almost American Girl. It's about immigration, it's about belonging, and it's about how a love of the arts can save a life. Let's take a listen.
When my mother and I left Korea, she told me that we're going on a vacation to Alabama. When we got there, she got married and we never went back. Fortunately, my mother found a comic book class and I was finally able to make my first American friends. I think it's incredibly important for kids to have something they can be passionate about, because without it, I don't know if I could have made it through.
I hope that one of the books I shared today spoke to you. Thinking back to what we talked about at the beginning of the book talk and the idea that maybe it's been a struggle to find something to read or find time to read or find a connection to reading. Even if one of these books did not, I hope that you're able to find something in the next couple days or weeks. And if you aren't, would you please reach out to me or your teacher or a classmate or friend and say, hey, here are some things that I like. Here are some things I like to do, and I would love to try and find a good book or couple books, especially with winter break, just a few weeks away. We would love to help you find something, because everybody should have a good book in their hands over that break in particular. We want to have you, set with something good to read. Thanks so much for your attention. I love sharing these books with you, and we will talk to you soon. Happy reading.